The contract sits in front of me, crisp and official. Whitmore Academy's deed of sale. My signature at the bottom, bold and decisive. Across the mahogany table, Mrs. Victoria Caldwell, my former high school teacher, stares at the document like it might burst into flames. "This can't be right," she whispers, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling as they hover over the papers. There must be some mistake. I lean back in the leather chair, savouring this moment I've dreamed about for 15 years. "No mistake, Mrs. Caldwell. As of today, I own this school, and you work for me." Her face drains of colour. The same woman who once stood in front of my entire senior class and declared that Emily Chen would never amount to anything more than a factory worker now sits before me, utterly powerless. But let me start from the beginning. Because this story, my story, didn't begin in this boardroom. It began in a cramped classroom 15 years ago with the most devastating moment of my teenage life. 15 years earlier. "Emily Chen, please stand up." Mrs. Caldwell's voice cuts through the morning chatter like a blade. I freeze at my desk, my essay on future career goals clutched in my sweaty palm. Around me, 28 pairs of eyes turn to stare. My stomach drops. I know that tone. It's the same one she uses before she destroys someone. "Yes, ma'am." My voice comes out smaller than I intended. Mrs. Caldwell, all 45 years of her bitter existence wrapped in a grey pantsuit, holds up my essay between two fingers like it's contaminated. "Class, I want you to listen carefully to what Miss Chen has written about her future." My heart pounds so hard I'm sure everyone can hear it. "Mrs. Caldwell, Silence!" She clears her throat dramatically. "Emily Chen believes she will become a successful entrepreneur and build an empire that changes the world." The class erupts in snickers. Jake Morrison, the quarterback who's never read a book in his life, actually slaps his knee. Even my supposed best friend Lisa covers her mouth to hide her giggle. But Mrs. Caldwell isn't finished with me yet. "Miss Chen," she continues, her voice dripping with mock sympathy, "I've been teaching for 23 years. I've seen thousands of students walk through these doors. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that you will never amount to anything more than a factory worker." The words hit me like physical blows. My chest tightens and I struggle to breathe. "You see, class," Mrs. Caldwell turns to address everyone while I stand there, humiliated and frozen. "Success requires more than wishful thinking. It requires intelligence, connections, and, frankly, a certain breeding that some people simply don't possess." Her eyes lock onto mine, cold and calculating. "Miss Chen comes from a poor immigrant family. Her father works in a restaurant kitchen. Her mother cleans office buildings. She gets mediocre grades despite clearly trying very hard. She has no special talents, no remarkable intelligence, and certainly no social graces." Each word is a dagger to my chest. Around me, my classmates lean forward, feeding off my humiliation like vultures. "The kindest thing I can do," Mrs. Caldwell concludes, "is to give you realistic expectations. You will graduate barely, get a job at the textile factory like your cousin, and live a perfectly ordinary life. There's no shame in knowing your place." I stand there for what feels like hours, but is probably only seconds, my entire world crashing down around me. The essay in my hand, full of dreams about starting my own company, about proving that immigrants' children could achieve anything, suddenly feels like a joke. "Sit down, Miss Chen, and perhaps next time, write about something more attainable?" I collapse into my seat, my face burning with shame. The whispers start immediately. "Did you see her face? She actually thought she could be successful. My dad says people like her should be grateful for factory jobs." That night, I cry until I have no tears left. My parents, who speak broken English and work 16-hour days just to keep food on the table, try to comfort me. But how can I tell them that their sacrifice means nothing to people like Mrs. Caldwell? How can I explain that in her eyes, we're not just poor, we're inferior? 3 months later, I drop out of high school. Mrs. Caldwell's prediction seems to be coming true when I start working at Henderson Textiles, operating the same machines my cousin warned me about. The work is mindless, repetitive, soul-crushing. For 8 hours a day, I stand in front of industrial looms, my dreams slowly unravelling with each passing thread. But something misses. Caldwell never understood about people like me, people who come from nothing, is that we're survivors. And survivors don't give up, they adapt. During my lunch breaks, I study. Not for some fantasy degree, but practical skills. Web design, digital marketing, basic accounting. The public library becomes my sanctuary, its computers my classroom. While my co-workers gossip about reality TV, I'm learning HTML and CSS from YouTube tutorials. Still playing with those computers, Emily? My supervisor Dave laughs one day when he catches me coding during break. You know, those things are just a fad, right? Real work happens with your hands. I smile and nod, but inside I'm calculating. I'm planning. I'm preparing for the moment when Mrs. Caldwell's carefully constructed world comes crashing down. That moment comes sooner than expected. 6 months into my factory job, I overhear 2 women in the break room complaining about their small businesses. Janet runs a local bakery, but can't figure out online ordering. Susan has a jewellery shop that's invisible to customers because she has no web presence. I don't understand all this computer stuff, Janet sighs. My daughter says I need a website, but those web design companies want $5,000 just to get started. My heart starts racing. $5,000. I could build them a better website for 1/10 of that cost. That weekend, I approached Janet with a proposal. For $500, I'll build her a professional website with online ordering capabilities. She's skeptical, I'm just a factory worker after all, but desperate enough to take the risk. 3 weeks later, Janet's bakery goes from 12 daily customers to over 60. Her online orders are backlogged for a week. She refers me to Susan, who refers me to 3 other business owners, who refer me to a dozen more. Within 6 months, I've built websites for half the small businesses in town. I quit the textile factory and rent a tiny office above the Chinese restaurant, where my father still works as a line cook. Chen Digital Solutions is born. But I'm not satisfied with local success. Mrs. Caldwell didn't just crush my dreams, she humiliated me in front of my peers, dismissed my entire family as inferior, and tried to trap me in a life of limitation. A small web design business isn't enough revenge for that level of cruelty. I need to build something bigger, something that will make her words echo back to haunt her. 5 years pass. Chen Digital Solutions grows into a full-service marketing agency. We expand beyond websites to comprehensive digital strategies, social media management, and e-commerce platforms. My team grows from just me to 15 employees, then 30, then 50. The local newspaper runs a feature story about young entrepreneurs making waves. Mrs. Caldwell's reaction to seeing my photo in the business section is apparently quite spectacular, according to my former classmate Mike, who now works at the paper. But I'm still not done. At 25, I sell Chen Digital Solutions to a national marketing firm for $12 million. Not because I need the money, but because I have bigger plans. The acquisition gives me capital and credibility for my next venture. Chen Industries begins as a holding company for digital assets, but quickly expands into real estate, technology investments, and education technology. Within 3 years, we're valued at over $100 million. Forbes puts me on their 30 under 30 inches list. Harvard Business School writes a case study about my company's growth strategy. Every achievement is another nail in Mrs. Caldwell's coffin of certainty. But the sweetest victory is still to come. During my rise through the business world, I've kept careful tabs on Whitmore Academy. The prestigious private school that once seemed so untouchable has been struggling for years. Enrollment is down, their endowment is depleted, and several board members have been caught in financial scandals. Most importantly, Mrs. Caldwell, now the principal after manoeuvring her way up through decades of political games, has made some very expensive mistakes. The school's aggressive expansion into sports facilities has left them over-leveraged. Their attempt to compete with newer, more modern private schools has drained their reserves. When I learn that Whitmore Academy is quietly seeking a buyer, I know exactly what I have to do. The negotiations take 6 months. Mrs. Caldwell fights the sale every step of the way, apparently sensing that something about the mysterious EC Holdings bidder isn't right. But the board of trustees is desperate, and my offer is substantially higher than any competitors. On the day the sale is finalised, I walk into the boardroom wearing a tailored Armani suit that costs more than Mrs. Caldwell's monthly salary. The lawyer handling the transaction announces that I am the principal shareholder of EC Holdings. Mrs. Caldwell looks confused at first. Then recognition dawns, and her face goes through a remarkable range of expressions: confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally a sickly shade of green. "Emily Chen," I say, extending my hand with a smile. "I believe you remember me." She stares at my outstretched hand like it might bite her. Around the table, the other board members shift uncomfortably, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. "There must be some mistake," she stammers. You're just a factory worker," I finish for her. "I was, for about 8 months, right after you convinced me I'd never amount to anything more than that." The room falls silent. Even the lawyers stop shuffling papers. "Now," I continue, settling into the head chair, "let's discuss your future employment here at my school." Mrs. Caldwell's hand hovers in the air between us for a full 10 seconds before she finally, reluctantly, shakes mine. Her palm is clammy, and I can feel her trembling. "Welcome to your first staff meeting as employees of Chen Educational Holdings," I announce to the room. "I'm sure you have questions." Board member Richard Thornton, a silver-haired man who's been at Whitmore for 30 years, clears his throat. "Miss Chen, while we appreciate your generous offer, perhaps we should discuss transition plans." "The transition is complete, Mr. Thornton?" I slide a folder across the mahogany table. "These are your new employment contracts. You'll find the terms quite reasonable, though significantly different from your previous board positions." The colour drains from his face as he opens the folder. You're dissolving the board?" "Restructuring," I correct. "Whitmore Academy has been hemorrhaging money for 5 years. Your leadership clearly hasn't been effective." I turn my attention back to Mrs. Caldwell, who's still standing frozen beside her chair. "Mrs. Caldwell, please sit. We have much to discuss." She sinks into her seat like a woman facing execution. "As the new owner, I'll be implementing immediate changes. First, all staff contracts are under review. Second, we're overhauling the curriculum completely. Third," I pause for effect, watching Mrs. Caldwell's face, I'll be taking a very hands-on approach to personnel decisions." "You can't just fire everyone." Mrs. Caldwell finally finds her voice. "We have tenure, union protections. This is a private institution, Mrs. Caldwell. Your protections are whatever I decide they are." I open my laptop and pull up a presentation. "Now, let me show you my vision for the new Whitmore Academy." The first slide makes 3 board members gasp audibly. It's a photo of me from Forbes magazine with the headline, "From Factory Floor to Fortune, Emily Chen's Billion-Dollar Rise." "Some of you may remember me from my brief time as a student here," I say conversationally. "Particularly you, Mrs. Caldwell, since you took such a personal interest in my education." Mrs. Caldwell's face has gone completely white. The other board members are looking between us, confusion written all over their faces. I believe your exact words were that I would never amount to anything more than a factory worker, that I lacked the intelligence, connections, and breeding necessary for success. I advanced to the next slide, a breakdown of my company's assets. Current net worth $1.2 billion, annual revenue $340 million, employees worldwide over 3,000. Richard Thornton whistles low. Jesus Christ, Emily, we had no idea. Of course you didn't. People like you never do. I closed the laptop with a sharp click. Which brings me to my first executive decision. Mrs. Caldwell, you're fired. The room erupts in chaos. Mrs. Caldwell shoots to her feet. You can't do this. I've given 30 years to this school. 30 years of poisoning young minds with your prejudice and limitations. I stand as well, my voice cutting through her protests. 30 years of crushing dreams and perpetuating class warfare. Your resignation is effective immediately. This is personal revenge, she shrieks. You're letting childhood grudges cloud your business judgment. On the contrary, this is excellent business judgment. I pull out my phone and tap the screen. Security will escort you out. Your personal belongings will be shipped to your home address. 2 uniformed guards enter the boardroom. Mrs. Caldwell looks around wildly, searching for support from her colleagues, but they're all staring at their new employment contracts with barely concealed panic. You haven't seen the last of me, Mrs. Caldwell hisses as the guards approach. I'll fight this. You'll do nothing, I interrupt, because in approximately 6 hours, every major news outlet in the state will be running a story about my acquisition of Whitmore Academy. The narrative will be quite inspiring. Local girl makes good, returns to transform the school that once rejected her potential. Mrs. Caldwell stops struggling against the security guards. The article will mention how certain teachers at Whitmore perpetuated harmful stereotypes about students from immigrant families, how they created hostile learning environments that drove promising young people to drop out. I walk around the table until I'm standing directly in front of her. Your name will feature prominently in that story, Mrs. Caldwell, along with quotes from several former students who've reached out to me over the years with their own experiences of your teaching methods. You're destroying my reputation. I'm revealing your character. I nod to the guards. Gentlemen, please escort Mrs. Caldwell off the premises. She's no longer welcome here. As they lead her away, she turns back one final time. This won't bring you peace, Emily. You'll always be that scared little girl I put in her place. The door closes behind them with a satisfying click. I turn back to the remaining board members, who are sitting in stunned silence. Now, shall we discuss the real changes coming to this institution? 3 days later, my first day as the active head of Whitmore Academy begins at 6 a.m. I arrive before any of the staff, using my new master key to walk through the halls that once felt like a prison. The building looks exactly the same. Polished marble floors, oil paintings of distinguished old white men, trophy cases filled with achievements from decades past. But everything feels different when you hold the power. I stop outside my old English classroom, now used for AP Literature. Through the window, I can see the desk where I once sat, humiliated and broken. The spot where Mrs. Caldwell delivered her crushing verdict on my future. Miss Chen? I turn to find Jessica Park, one of the younger teachers, standing hesitantly in the hallway. She's holding a coffee cup with shaking hands. Good morning, Jessica. Early start today? I wanted to prepare for your classroom observations. She swallows hard. Are you really going to be sitting in on all our classes? Selected classes, I clarify. I want to understand how this school actually functions, not just how it looks on paper. Jessica nods rapidly. Of course, whatever you need. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Is it true? What Mrs. Caldwell said about you being a student here? I study her face. Jessica is probably in her late 20s, idealistic enough to still believe teaching can change the world. Exactly the kind of person Mrs. Caldwell would have slowly corrupted over time. Yes, it's true. I was here for 2.5 years before I dropped out. Why did you drop out? The question hangs in the air between us. I could give her a sanitized answer, something about family financial pressures or academic struggles. Instead, I decide on honesty. Because Mrs. Caldwell convinced me I was worthless, that my dreams were laughable and my background made me inferior to the other students. Jessica's face crumples. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was like that with students. She was like that with students who didn't fit her narrow definition of success. Poor students, immigrant students. Anyone who challenged her worldview that worth is determined by birth rather than effort. That's horrible. Jessica's voice is barely a whisper. No wonder you fired her. I didn't fire her for what she did to me 15 years ago, Jessica. I fired her for what she was still doing to students today. Before Jessica can respond, other teachers begin arriving. I watch them through the hallway window, some confident, others nervous or whispering about the dramatic changes. Word travels fast in a school this size. At 7:30, I call an all-staff meeting in the auditorium. 63 teachers, administrators and support staff file in, their faces a mixture of curiosity, fear and resentment. Many of them worked under Mrs. Caldwell for years. Some probably share her views. I take the stage without notes or presentation slides. Just me, facing the people who will determine whether this transformation succeeds or fails. I know many of you are confused, angry, or worried about the changes happening at Whitmore. Some of you probably think I'm here to settle old scores or pursue personal vendettas. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. You're right. This is personal. It's personal because education should be personal. Because every student who walks through these doors deserves to have their potential recognised and nurtured, regardless of their last name or their parents' bank account. I pace across the stage, making eye contact with teachers throughout the auditorium. Over the next month, I'll be observing classes, reviewing curriculum, and evaluating personnel. Some of you will discover that your teaching methods no longer align with this school's values. Some of you will find new opportunities elsewhere. Dr. Hammond, the assistant principal, raises his hand. Miss Chen, what exactly are these new values you're implementing? Excellence without exclusion. High standards without elitism. Academic rigour paired with genuine compassion for every learner. I stop pacing and face the crowd directly. If you can't embrace those principles, you don't belong at the new Whitmore Academy. The auditorium falls silent. I can see them processing, calculating, deciding whether they're willing to adapt or if they'd rather jump ship before I push them overboard. Your first test begins today. I'll be sitting in on classes randomly over the next 2 weeks. I won't be looking for perfect lessons or impressive displays. I'll be watching how you treat students who struggle, how you respond to questions that challenge conventional thinking, how you handle moments when young people don't fit your expectations. Several teachers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Mrs. Caldwell ruled through fear and intimidation. That era is over, but make no mistake, I have much higher standards than she ever did. The difference is that my standards apply to how we serve our students, not how we judge them. As the meeting ends and teachers file out, I notice clusters forming in the hallway. Some are animated, clearly excited about the changes. Others look grim, whispering among themselves with the urgency of conspirators. This is just the beginning. Mrs. Caldwell may be gone, but her influence lingers in the culture she created, the attitudes she fostered. The systems she put in place to reward conformity and punish originality, destroying her was satisfying. Rebuilding this place will be the real challenge. But as I watch the students arriving for their first day, backpacks slung over shoulders, voices echoing through the marble halls, I feel something I haven't experienced in 15 years. Hope. 2 weeks into my classroom observations, I discover something that makes Mrs. Caldwell's cruelty look like child's play. I'm sitting in the back of advanced biology, watching Miss Rodriguez teach cellular respiration, when I notice something odd. 3 students, all scholarship recipients from working-class families, are using outdated textbooks while the rest of the class has brand new editions. Interesting teaching strategy, I murmur to Miss Rodriguez after class. Different textbooks for different students. She freezes, clutching her lesson plan against her chest. The school said there was a budget shortage. We only had enough new books for the tuition-paying students. My blood runs cold. Who told you that? Mrs. Caldwell. She said scholarship students should be grateful for any materials, even if they were older editions. I spend the next 3 days conducting a quiet audit of textbook distribution across all departments. What I find makes me physically sick. For the past 5 years, Whitmore Academy has been operating a 2-tier education system. Scholarship students, predominantly minorities, and children from immigrant families, have been systematically given inferior materials, excluded from advanced placement courses, and steered away from college preparatory tracks. But the real bombshell comes when I dig into the financial records. Late one evening, alone in my new office, I discover a series of administrative fees charged exclusively to scholarship families. Supplemental learning materials, academic support services, facility maintenance contributions, fees that total nearly $3,000 per student per year, money that was supposed to come from the scholarship fund. Mrs. Caldwell has been stealing from the most vulnerable families in the school. I'm still staring at the computer screen, in disbelief, when my phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You need to stop digging, or you'll regret it. 20 minutes later, another message. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. I screenshot both messages and forward them to my head of security. Then, I dig deeper. The financial manipulation goes back 8 years. Mrs. Caldwell, working with business manager Franklin Walsh, has been siphoning money from the scholarship fund to pad their own salaries and fund unnecessary administrative expenses. The board never questioned it because the scholarship students' families were too intimidated to complain about additional fees. But it gets worse. I find emails between Mrs. Caldwell and several teachers discussing academic placement strategies for scholarship students. The language is coded, but the intent is clear. Keep the poor kids out of advanced classes so they don't compete with tuition-paying students for college admissions. One email from Dr. Hammond to Mrs. Caldwell makes my hands shake with rage. Per our discussion, I've moved the Martinez girl out of AP Calculus and into regular math. Her test scores were actually higher than Jeremy Thornton's, but we can't have scholarship students outperforming board members' children. I told her parents she wasn't ready for the advanced curriculum. Or Jeremy Thornton, board member Richard Thornton's son. The same Richard Thornton who questioned my authority in the first board meeting. I print every document, every email, every financial record. The evidence fills 3 bankers' boxes by midnight. The next morning, I call an emergency meeting with the remaining administrative staff. Franklin Walsh arrives looking nervous, constantly checking his phone. Dr. Hammond sits rigidly in his chair, avoiding eye contact. Gentlemen, I begin placing the first box of evidence on the conference table. We need to discuss your retirement plans. Franklin's face goes ashen. Miss Chen, if this is about budget concerns, it's about theft. I open the box and pull out a stack of financial statements. Specifically, your theft of scholarship funds to line your own pockets. Dr. Hammond starts to stand. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sit down. My voice cuts through the room like ice. The only misunderstanding was thinking you could steal from immigrant families without consequences. I spread the evidence across the table like a prosecutor presenting a case. Bank records showing diverted funds, emails discussing academic sabotage, documentation of the two-tier textbook system. Here's what's going to happen, I continue. Mr. Walsh, you're going to write a check for $847,000, the exact amount you've stolen from the scholarship fund over 8 years. Dr. Hammond, you're going to personally apologise to every family whose child you've sabotaged, and you're going to write recommendation letters for their college applications. Franklin's voice comes out as a squeak. We don't have that kind of money. Then you'll sell your houses, liquidate your retirement accounts, whatever it takes, because the alternative is federal prison for embezzlement and civil rights violations. Dr. Hammond tries a different approach. Emily, we can work this out privately. There's no need to involve... Don't. I lean forward, letting him see the fury in my eyes. Don't you dare use my first name like we're colleagues. You destroyed children's futures for money. You're lucky I'm giving you the chance to make restitution, instead of calling the FBI immediately. Both men sit in stunned silence. You have 48 hours to comply. Miss the deadline and I release everything to the press and the authorities simultaneously. I stand and walk toward the door. Oh, and gentlemen, you're both fired. Security will escort you out after you sign the restitution agreements. That afternoon, I call an assembly for all scholarship students and their families. Word has already started spreading about the administrative changes, and the auditorium buzzes with nervous energy. Maria Martinez sits in the third row with her parents, the same girl who was removed from AP Calculus to protect Jeremy Thornton's ego. Behind her, I spot David Kim, whose mother cleans office buildings just like mine once did. In the back, Jasmine Washington fidgets with her worn backpack, probably wondering if her scholarship is in jeopardy. These are my people, the ones Mrs. Caldwell saw as unworthy, the ones this system was designed to break. 2 weeks ago, I became the owner of this school, I begin. Many of you don't know my story, so let me tell you why I'm here. I share everything. My humiliation in Mrs. Caldwell's class, dropping out and working in the factory, building my business empire from nothing. The auditorium is silent except for occasional gasps from parents who recognise themselves in my struggle. But I didn't buy this school just to settle old scores, I continue. I bought it because I discovered that the discrimination I faced 15 years ago never stopped. It just became more sophisticated. I explain the two-tier education system, the stolen scholarship funds, the deliberate academic sabotage. Several parents begin crying. One father shouts angrily in Spanish before his wife calms him down. Effective immediately, every scholarship student will receive brand new textbooks and materials. Every artificially imposed barrier to advanced classes is removed, and every family that was charged illegal fees will receive full restitution plus interest. The applause is thunderous, but I'm not finished. More importantly, this school will now operate on a simple principle. Your worth is determined by your effort and character, not your parents' bank account. Excellence will be measured by how far you've come, not where you started. Maria Martinez raises her hand tentatively. Miss Chen, what if some of the teachers don't like the changes? I smile at her. Then they can find jobs at schools that value prejudice over potential. You belong in AP Calculus, Maria. In fact, I'm recommending you for our new accelerated STEM program. After the assembly, families approach me with stories that break my heart and fuel my determination. Parents who worked double shifts to pay Mrs. Caldwell's illegal fees. Students who were told they weren't college material despite having higher grades than their wealthy classmates. dreams deferred and potential wasted by a system designed to keep them down. But something else emerges from these conversations, something Mrs. Caldwell never anticipated. These families are fighters. They've survived poverty, discrimination, and systemic barriers that would crush weaker spirits. Now that they know someone is finally on their side, they're ready to prove what they're capable of. As I drive home that evening, my phone rings. It's my head of security. "Miss Chen, we've identified the source of those threatening texts. You're not going to like this. Tell me." They came from Richard Thornton's phone. Seems he's not happy about his son losing his academic advantages. I pull over to the side of the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Richard Thornton, the board member who questioned my authority. The father who benefited from his son's artificially inflated academic standing. Did you trace any other communications? That's the interesting part. Thornton's been in contact with someone at the district attorney's office. Looks like he's trying to build a case against you for hostile takeover practices. I laugh, but there's no humour in it. Of course he is. These people can't accept that their world of unearned privilege is crumbling. Let him try, I tell my security chief. We have enough evidence to bury the entire old guard. If Thornton wants a war, he'll get one. But as I continue driving home, a different thought occurs to me. Thornton isn't just protecting his son's academic advantages. He's protecting something bigger, a network of wealthy families who've been gaming the system for years. Mrs. Caldwell wasn't the mastermind. She was just the enforcer. The real power structure that crushed my dreams and countless others is still intact, and they're about to fight back with everything they have. This revolution is just beginning. The war begins 3 days later with a surprise inspection from the State Education Department. Richard Thornton's connections run deeper than I anticipated. His brother-in-law sits on the state board. "Miss Chen," announces Inspector Williams, a stern woman with a clipboard and the demeanour of someone who enjoys finding violations. "We've received serious allegations about financial irregularities and discriminatory practices at this institution." I'm in my office reviewing college applications from our scholarship students when she arrives with 2 assistants and a mandate to audit everything. They spread through the school like locusts, examining records, interviewing teachers, scrutinising every change I've implemented. "I assume you have documentation for all these reforms?" Williams asks, emphasising the word like it tastes bitter. "Comprehensive documentation," I reply, gesturing to the meticulously organised files covering my desk. "Would you like to see the evidence of the previous administration's systematic discrimination first, or shall we start with the financial fraud?" Her confidence wavers slightly, but she recovers quickly. "We'll be conducting our own investigation. Thank you." While the inspectors work, I notice something troubling. Several teachers, particularly those close to Mrs. Caldwell, are providing information that contradicts the evidence I've uncovered. They're painting me as a vindictive former student destroying a prestigious institution for personal revenge. By lunch, local news trucks are parked outside the school gates. That evening, Channel 7 runs a hit piece titled "Billionaire's Revenge. Did Emily Chen buy a school just to settle old scores?" The report features anonymous quotes from concerned educators, questioning my motives and qualifications. But they made one critical mistake. They interviewed Mrs. Caldwell. "Emily Chen was an unremarkable student from a troubled background," she tells the camera, sitting in her pristine living room with her late husband's awards displayed prominently behind her. I tried to give her realistic expectations about her future, and instead of taking constructive criticism, she's chosen to destroy an institution that has educated leaders for over a century. The reporter leans forward sympathetically. "Some people are calling this a hostile takeover motivated by personal vendetta rather than educational improvement." Mrs. Caldwell nods gravely. "Emily always had delusions of grandeur. I suppose when you give someone that much money, those delusions become dangerous to everyone around them." I watch the segment 3 times, taking notes. Then, I make a phone call. Maria, it's Miss Chen. Are you free tomorrow evening? I have a proposition for you. The next day, while inspectors continue crawling through my school, I implement phase 2 of my plan. If they want to make this about credibility and character, let's discuss credibility and character. I call a press conference for 6 p.m. in the school auditorium. Every major news outlet in the state sends reporters. The same auditorium where Mrs. Caldwell once humiliated me is now packed with cameras and journalists waiting for my response, but I don't appear on stage alone. Maria Martinez steps up to the podium first, wearing her new AP Calculus textbook like armour. Behind her stand 15 other scholarship students, each holding evidence of their academic sabotage. My name is Maria Martinez, she begins, her voice steady despite the bright lights. Mrs. Caldwell removed me from advanced placement calculus because she said I wasn't smart enough. But she lied. She removed me because my test scores were higher than a board member's son. Murmurs ripple through the press corps. Maria holds up 2 documents, her original placement test showing a 97% score and Jeremy Thornton's showing 84%. Mrs. Caldwell told my parents that scholarship students like me should be grateful for basic education and not reach above our station. She said children from families like mine weren't college material. David Kim steps forward next. Mrs. Caldwell charged my mother $400 for supplemental learning materials that never existed. My mother worked 16-hour days cleaning offices to pay money that was supposed to be covered by my scholarship. One by one, the students share their stories. Jasmine Washington talks about being steered away from pre-med courses despite her 4.0 GPA. Carlos Rodriguez describes how his essays for the school literary magazine were rejected without explanation, while inferior work from wealthy students was published. The reporters are frantically taking notes, realizing this isn't just about one vindictive billionaire, it's about systemic corruption. Then I take the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the real Whitmore Academy, not the polished image they present to donors and parents, but the machine designed to crush potential and perpetuate inequality. I gesture to the students behind me. These young people represent the future Mrs. Caldwell tried to steal, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked the right last names and bank accounts. I pull out my tablet and display financial records on the large screen behind me. Over the past 8 years, the previous administration stole $847,000 from scholarship funds. They created a 2-tier education system that gave inferior materials to low-income students. They systematically excluded minorities from advanced courses to preserve artificial advantages for wealthy families. The auditorium erupts as reporters shout questions. I raise my hand for silence. But here's what Mrs. Caldwell and her supporters don't understand about people like us. I look directly into the main camera. We're not victims. We're survivors. And when you give survivors the tools and opportunities they deserve, they don't just succeed, they transform everything around them. Behind me, the students begin revealing their recent achievements. Maria's acceptance to MIT's early admission program, David's perfect SAT scores, Jasmine's research paper being published in a medical journal. Mrs. Caldwell said I would never amount to anything more than a factory worker. She was wrong about me, and she's been wrong about hundreds of students over the years. The only difference is that I now have the power to make sure she's never wrong about anyone again. The press conference goes viral within hours. #Whitmore scandal trends nationally as people share their own stories of educational discrimination. Former students from across the country post testimonials about Mrs. Caldwell's toxic teaching methods. But the real bombshell comes at 11 p.m. when investigative reporter Janet Shu releases a follow-up story she's been working on independently. Exclusive. Secret recording reveals Whitmore Academy's discriminatory practices. The story includes audio of a school board meeting from 3 years ago, a meeting I knew nothing about. In the recording, Mrs. Caldwell and Richard Thornton discuss their strategies for managing the scholarship programme. We can't be too obvious about it, Thornton's voice crackles through poor quality audio, but we need to ensure these scholarship kids don't overshadow our paying families. Parents are starting to ask why their children aren't performing as well as some of these less privileged students. Mrs. Caldwell's voice responds, "Leave that to me. I have ways of managing expectations and academic placement that won't raise red flags." Good. We're paying full tuition for our children to have advantages. If scholarship students start competing on equal footing, parents will start questioning what they're paying for. The recording continues for 12 minutes, laying out their systematic plan to handicap scholarship students while enriching themselves through fraudulent fees. By morning, the State Education Department announces they're dropping their investigation of my reforms and launching a criminal investigation into the previous administration. The FBI opens a civil rights case. The IRS begins auditing the school's financial records from the past decade. Richard Thornton resigns from every board position he holds and hires a criminal defense attorney. 6 months later, I stand in the same auditorium where this all began, watching our first graduation ceremony under the new administration. The valedictorian is Maria Martinez, who will be attending MIT on a full scholarship. The salutatorian is David Kim, heading to Stanford for pre-med. Of the 43 scholarship students in the graduating class, 41 have been accepted to four-year colleges. 12 have full scholarships to Ivy League schools. Mrs. Caldwell sits in federal prison, serving an 18-month sentence for embezzlement and civil rights violations. Richard Thornton is awaiting trial on conspiracy charges. Franklin Walsh and Dr. Hammond are bankrupt from restitution payments. But the real victory isn't their punishment, it's the transformation of this place. Whitmore Academy now operates with full transparency. Every policy is published online. All financial records are open to family review. Academic placement is based solely on merit and student interest, regardless of family income. Most importantly, we've established the Chen Foundation for Educational Equity, providing full scholarships and support services for first-generation college students across the state. As I watch Maria deliver her valedictorian speech about overcoming limitations others place on you, my phone buzzes with a text message from an unlisted number. "You won! Are you happy now?" I recognise the bitter tone even through text. Mrs. Caldwell, probably using a contraband phone in prison. I type back slowly, choosing my words carefully. This was never about winning or losing. It was about making sure no other child has to hear that their dreams don't matter because of where they come from. You taught me the most important lesson of my life, that sometimes the people who claim to educate us are actually the ones who need to learn the most. I hit send, then block the number, because this story, my story, isn't about revenge anymore. It's about redemption. Not mine, but theirs. Every student who believed their teacher when they were told they weren't good enough. Every parent who accepted that their child's dreams were too big for their circumstances. Mrs. Caldwell was right about one thing. I never forgot the lesson she taught me in that classroom 15 years ago. She just didn't understand what the lesson actually was. The lesson wasn't that I should know my place. The lesson was that sometimes, when the system is broken, you have to break it back. And then you build something better from the pieces.